Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to cover another aspect of accessing files in Python, and that's the seek method that I mentioned in some of my earlier videos. So we're going to see how we can use the seek function to move around within a file so that, well, potentially our scripts will be a little bit better. I'm also, as we do this, going to demonstrate the difference between the append and read and the read and write modes of opening a file, since I realized I didn't do that in the initial video. They make more sense here with seek for reasons I'll explain in a moment. So before we get to the seek, we'll do what I was just talking about. So I've got that same file that I was working with, although I was playing around with a .dat instead of a CSV, so I'll just quickly update that. So this time, instead of just read or write or append, I'm going to use the R+ mode, so read and write. And all I'm going to do is read a line from the file and print it out, write a line to the end of the file, and then read another line. And what you'll notice is it will read the first line from the file, but then it's going to write to the end of the file, and then the next time I call read line, it's going to read nothing. So if we... Actually, I'll just do my backup right now so I know that file is unmodified, just like it was in the previous demonstrations. And if I call file.py, we print the first line, and then we print nothing. And if we take a look at the moons file, and we jump way down to the end, there's the extra text. So initially, I read that first line, but then as soon as I said write, it jumped me to the end of the file. I wrote there, and the next time I tried to read a line, I was reading at the end of the file, so we got nothing. If I copy the file again so it's unmodified, I'm going to go back in there and put in append plus. So that's append and read. And what you'll notice, the only real difference is when we go to read, our read location is at the end of the file as well. So this time we'll read and print a blank line, write that's no moon to the end of the file, and read and print a blank line just like we did with the first, the R+. So it prints nothing, and when we look at moons.csv, all it's done is print that's no moon at the end of the file. I didn't want to do that, I wanted to VI. So the slightly confusing thing about the R+ and the A+, which is why I didn't demonstrate them in the earlier video, is they make a difference for where your read cursor is. R+ starts you reading at the beginning of the file, A+ starts you reading at the end of the file. They don't make a difference for where your write cursor is. For both, you're writing at the end of the file, and as soon as you start writing in R+, it moves your read cursor to the end of the file as well. So, maybe a little bit counterintuitive. However, there's a way that we can make this make a bit more sense, and that's this seek function. This allows us to change the position in our file. So if we wanted in R+ mode to actually start writing something at the beginning of the file instead of just adding it to the end, well, seek will allow us to move that write cursor to the beginning of the file. And it takes two arguments: a number of characters to move, and a position to use as the start of that move. And this should be pretty simple, but that number of characters to move is only allowed to not be 0 in a text file if you're using the start of the file as your position. So your position to start from can be 0, the beginning of the file, or 2, the end of the file. Theoretically, there is a 1 that allows you to pick partway through the file, but it's only it's your current location, but it's only actually available in binary files, and since we're dealing with this from an administrator perspective, not a programmer perspective, we're not really dealing with data in binary much. So I just won't be dealing with that. Now, theoretically, what you would do in a binary file is you could give seek a number of characters from your current position. It would just move your position forward in the file, but yeah, we can't do that in text files. We can either number of characters is 0 and position is 2 to jump to the end of the file, or number of characters is some number of characters and 0 for the position to indicate number of characters from the start of the file. But how we will frequently be using this is just seek 0, 0 to jump to the beginning of the file. So you might remember the demo that I gave in a previous video. I believe I called it filedemo.py, where I opened that Moons file for reading, I copied all the data out, and then I closed the file. And then I separately opened the file for writing, so that got my cursor back to the beginning of the file, and then as I read through that data, line by line by line, I used my string methods, or string functions, to modify the data a little bit, print it out to the terminal, write it to the file, and then when I was done, I could close. Now, this only works because I'm dealing with reasonably small files that I can just read the whole thing into memory at once. I have occasionally had to deal with motion capture files that are upwards of a gigabyte for a single file. Maybe don't want to try to read that into memory all at once, but that was a binary file. So it really has no bearing on this. However, you'll also notice I'm opening the file, closing it, and then reopening it again in a different mode. This is more trouble than it's worth now that we have that seek function. So this is the exact same script, but what I've done is instead of opening it, reading it, and then closing it, I'm opening it in R+, so read and write. I use read lines to copy all the data out into a set, or pardon me, a list. And then I use seek to go back to the beginning of the file, move that right cursor that would currently be sitting at the end of the file back to the beginning. So 0 characters from the beginning of the file. And then I have that for loop just like we had before, line by line, loop through, replace Voyager 1 with Professor Doom, print out the text, write it to the file, and when I'm done, close the file. So now I only need to open the file once and close it once instead of twice. That's not what I wanted to do. So I'll copy that file again from our backup, make sure that it's an untouched copy of the file, and if I say file read 3, it prints them all out. I guess I could have put a strip on the print statement there, and if you go way, way back, The ones that had been discovered by the Voyager 1 probe have now been discovered by Professor Doom. Actually, we don't even need to go back into the file. What we've looked at is how we can use that seek function specifically to move around to the beginning of a file. Theoretically, you could jump to the end if you wanted to with 0,2, or if you knew you wanted to jump a certain number of characters from the beginning of the file, whatever number of characters, comma 0. So, nice, simple way to move our cursor to make accessing our files a little bit easier. There's one last thing to combine this with in a last video, which, well, that's what I'm recording next, so I will see you there.